welcome to 2018. It's a new year and I'm here with a new release of the PowerBI desktop. As always, we have tons of features to walk you through, and we're going to start out with the reporting features. The first feature on our list is the ability to show and hide pages. It's pretty straightforward. It is what it says right there on the slide. You can now, whenever you have any pages you don't want to be seen by people consuming your report, you can just right-click on the page and hide it. There are many reasons you may want to do this. You may have a scratch page that you're just working on, or you want to temporarily remove a page because you need to make some adjustments to it. You may also have pages that don't make sense for users to just directly access. You may want them to only reach that page by drilling through to it, or through navigation you set up using bookmarking, in which case you wouldn't want them to see the page in the navigation bar, and so you can now hide those pages. So let me show you how to use that feature. So this report that I have has a drill through page as part of the report, and drill through pages don't really make sense whenever you're just navigating around your report. So I really want that to only be accessible to my users whenever they're drilling through from a different page. So what I'm going to do is right-click on the manufacturer data page, and I'm going to pick the hide option. Now whenever I'm in the desktop, I'm always in editing mode. So instead of being completely gone now from my view, you see that the page name is grayed out and it just is dimmer. That's to indicate that the page is now going to be hidden from any consumers. You can still access it, you can still do anything you want to it and continue to format and modify the page, but you do have the indicator that it's now hidden. Now whenever I publish this and view the same report on the service where there is a reading mode, you can see while I'm in the reading mode, I cannot see that page at all. Just to show you that it is actually there, I'll go to edit mode in the service, and you can see it has the same dimmed out look in the web service. And of course, like I mentioned before, you can still access these pages if you set it up so that it can be. So that page was a drill through page, so all I have to do is right click and pick drill through, and I will be taken to that drill through page. Since it is hidden, I don't see anything selected in the bottom navigation. The page is hidden from view, so there's nothing to show down here. This page is still a normal page, so you can do things like pin from it, you can link to it from bookmarking. Any of the normal features still work. You just can't get to it through the normal page navigation way. Next on our list is the ability to control the background color for your data labels whenever you have data labels in your Cartesian and map visuals. So for example, if I turn data labels on this chart, they of course by default show up in the auto position with no background, but I can, inside the card, I have this new option called show background. Whenever I turn that switch on, they automatically get a light gray background, and I can control that. So the color was actually black and just had some transparency set to it. So I can pick whatever color I want, say for example purple, and then I can go ahead and adjust the transparency so that it's solid purple or almost white, whatever works best for my report. This can help with readability, especially in cases where, right here it's showing everything on top, but if one of my bars is really close to the top, that data label might scrunch down into the bar, partially into the bar, which can make it kind of hard to find a font color that looks great on both the data bar and also in the background. So in those cases, you can add a background color to the label as well, and that will just make the coloring much more consistent and readable in those cases. You may already know that we have actually had background colors for maps for a while for the category labels. They've always looked like this, but you really couldn't do anything with it. You couldn't change its color, you couldn't do anything like that. Well now, since we've added background color to Cartesian charts, That same capabilities now exist also for the category labels and maps, so I can go in and adjust the transparency and the background color and everything, just like in Cartesian charts. We have lots of formatting improvements this month, so continuing along that same train. Our next one up is the ability to increase the area used for axis labels and charts. So frequently, especially with bar charts, you can end up in a case where the labels concatenate really quickly. In my case, by default, they don't, but it's really easy with just a couple of increases in my font size. I really hit the truncation really quickly. And if you have even longer labels, you would have hit that with just the default setting. And at this point, you would have previously been kind of stuck. You would either have to just accept the truncation, decrease the font size back to a smaller size, or having to resize your visual. Well, now, if you really want them to be that size, and you want them to still show the full text, you can now use this maximum size option to increase the size of the axis itself in the room we're giving the text. So I can increase that up to 50% of the maximum size if I wanted to. Of course, I don't need to go that far for this specific case, but I know if I increase it a lot, that's how much I'm willing to devote percentage-wise of my chart to my axis if my labels do happen to get bigger as more data flows in. So this is a really great way to make your axis labels more readable. For bar and column charts, we also have the ability to adjust the padding between the bars as well now. So this is really useful if you want to, say, for example, create something that combine this feature with binning, for example, and create something similar to a histogram by reducing the padding between all the bars to 0. You may also not like visually the way our bars look by default when you only have one or two values. They can sometimes get a little big, so if you're really into skinny bars, you could also increase the padding, and which will result in skinnier bars. So that option is actually right underneath the new maximum size option. We also have the inner padding option. And the default is 20, but I can increase the padding to make the bars even narrower, or I can put it down to 0, and if this had been a chart with binning, it would have looked similar to a histogram at that point. The next feature on our list is the ability to actually see the hierarchy that we're automatically creating for your date fields. So looking in my field list here, you'll see that I have an order date in my report. And as you know, we automatically create a hierarchy for you whenever you are using that date field. Whenever you automatically drag it into an axis, we will show you the entire hierarchy, and of course you can add or remove those pieces as you want. But that used to be all you could do. You always, by default, got the whole hierarchy, and the only thing you could do is if you didn't want it to switch over to the full date instead of the hierarchy. But if you wanted to get at those individual levels, you couldn't, and you actually couldn't visually see the hierarchy regenerated in the field list. Now, what I can do is I can expand that field and see the hierarchy that was actually created. And a nice benefit of that, in addition to just getting more awareness for what PowerBI is doing behind the scenes, is that I can also now, if I really just cared about month, all I have to do to get to just the month is drag it on, and now I have a table of just the months. To do that before, I would have had to add the entire hierarchy and then delete year, quarter, and day just to get the month. So this feature just makes it a little bit easier to work with our automatically generated hierarchies. Now this feature is a preview for now, so to use it you will have to go into our options dialog to turn it on. Last up on our list of reporting features is the ability to add an anchor date for your relative date slicer. By default, the relative date slicer always works in reference to whatever day to day is. But if you wanted to instead be the last 7 days from a specific date that you have in mind, you can now do that with the anchor date. So let's go look at my slicer on this page. Now if I was to say wanting to go look at the last 3 calendar years, of my report, you can see that the date is referencing 3 calendar years from today's date. But if I wanted to say anchor that from a different day in the past, so say 2016, just picking a random date here, you can see this has been adjusted, so now it's showing 3 last calendar years from my anchor date. This can be really useful if, for example, you needed to see your sales from a specific date for reporting reasons, or another good use case of it was, let's say it's review time and you want to look at your sales since in the 3 months since the last review that you had with your manager. You could pick whatever anchor date was the date of your last review. Let's just say that was May 2015. I'm picking 2015 because this data has really old dates in it. So let's just say May 2015, and now I can look at the next 3 months since that point, and now I have all the data I need for that review, looking at what's kind of happened since my last review. So there's lots of good use cases for this anchor date. So if you do have something similar in your report, make sure to give this a try. Next up is my typical section on new custom visuals that have come out. And the very first one I want to talk about is our new Power Apps custom visual. So Power Apps is a great service that Microsoft provides that lets you create apps that you can do things like, say, update your data or choose to trigger some other flow that needs to happen. And this is really useful when combined with Power BI, because a lot of times whenever you have a report and you're doing your analysis, just getting the insight isn't the end result you want. You want to act on those insights. And so that's where Power Apps can come in. You can do things like modify your data in your database, or choose to order new products based off of what's already sold. You can create a Power App to do those things. And now with the Power Apps custom visual, you can have those apps right there in your Power BI report, so you no longer have to go somewhere different to trigger that change. Now I'm not going to show you the custom visual here. My colleague Chuck made an excellent video on this custom visual, so if you want to learn more about it, make sure to go and watch his video on the visual. The next custom visual on my list is the Tree Viz. And the Tree Viz visual is all around being able to display your data in a tree-like form, so where there is children and parents in some form of a hierarchy. So for example, this Tree Viz visual has a hierarchy of city, then item, then customer. And at first you only see the city view, and you see the 2 largest cities, and everything else is grouped into this other node. If you want to see them, you can choose to hit the left arrow, which would expand out to show all of them, or you can then hit the collapse button as well to collapse them back. And then if you want to move to the next level of the hierarchy, you can hit the down arrow, and that would expand down into the next level, which is the items. And you can continue to do that to move into the customers. And so this visual is really nice if you have this hierarchy in your data and you want to display it in that manner. The Funnel with Source by Mock Software visual is a wonderful funnel chart visual that not only shows your data as it transitions through each of the different stages, it also has this great concept of source, so you can see not only how the data travels through each of the different funnel levels, but also where did it originate from before it entered into this funnel. So you can see here there's 2 great examples of the different stages of being shown in this funnel. And on the top one, in addition to the categories and the measure, you also have the source comes from this category bucket, which they put country in. And of course you can use it as a source across highlighting, so you can click on any of the different months and also choose the source. So now I can narrow down my data and only see the data that originated from China as it goes through my funnel and move into Singapore and do the same. So if you have, for example, sales data and you want to see it travel through the different stages of a typical sell from whenever it's just a, it's in this early sales stages when it's still just a concept, going all the way through to whenever the actual purchase happens. Another visual by Mock Software, their Box and Whisker Chart, is a really good chart whenever you want to be able to do an analysis on your data to see more of the distribution of it. So see the low point, the high point, and also the distribution of the data into quartiles. It's a really useful visual for that. And you can see their version of the visual is really pretty. It lets you do things like kind of divide it up into sections. So you can see here it's split not only into quarter but also into regions, so you kind of have that small multiples effect. You can see each of the different dots in the box and whisker plot. It's not only they don't only just represent a point, so for example like the highest point or the lowest point. They also tell you what city they come from, so you can see not only the distribution of all of your data, but also see for those important points, the unique ones, you can see also extra information like whatever category you're interested in as extra information. Not only that, you can also see they have, based off of this legend here, you can also see that the size of the points are based off of yet another measure, in this case profit. So you can see the bigger dot sizes had more profit versus the smaller dot sizes. So you can see this visual is really information dense. Not only is it for the categories that I'm interested in, giving me the spread of my data for sales. That's what the actual box and whisker plot is showing, but it's also giving me, through the dot size and the legend, even more detailed information about each of these individual points. If you're interested in this visual, I definitely recommend downloading the sample for this visual because they have tons of great examples of them using the box and whisker plot in different configurations with different formatting options. You can even change the orientation and they show you that as well. So make sure to download the sample just so you can see the power of this visual. The Agility Planning Matrix Lite visual is a custom visual version of the matrix that has some nice features added onto it, like for example being able to see all the filters being applied to that matrix at the visual level, and also being able to expand and collapse individual rows of the data all within the visual itself. So you can see in this custom visual, you can see at the top right here is where the filters are showing. So you can actually see like, oh, okay, I'm only looking at 2017. I'm only looking at this specific demo company. And then so that I'm not confused about what numbers I'm seeing, it's really obvious right from those filters. I can also you can see here there's a hierarchy in here, and I can choose to expand and collapse individual rows of my hierarchy. So if you're looking for those features integrated into your matrix, you can always give this visual a try. The Image Grid Custom Visual is a really unique custom visual that's kind of like a word cloud for images. It's a really fun way to show off your images, and it has a couple of different layouts. So first of all, you have to put the image URL field in the visual so it knows what visuals to show. And then you have a couple of different layouts. The first one, this one on the left, it's based off of the list of all the images, and the ones on top of the list are going to be showing bigger, and the ones further down the list are smaller. You can also have it weighted by measure, so that the higher the measure you give it, so for example sales, the bigger the image, and the less sales, the smaller the image. And lastly, you also have a grid-like layout as well if you're not a big fan of the word cloud experience. So this is a really fun custom visual. I'm sure you can find some great use cases for it, and it will just kind of liven up your report if you do choose to use it. The last custom visual I have on my list for this month is yet another custom visual by Mock Software. They were pretty busy. This one is a Gantt chart, and if you know about Gantt charts, you would know that they're used a lot for scheduling and seeing how, especially if you're running a project, what all the different pieces are, when they need to be done, are they ahead or behind schedule, especially compared to today's date. So you can see if your project's running smoothly and make decisions based off of that, like do I need to add more resources to this or that, or adjust my deadline, things like that. And their custom visual is really good for this. You can see, looking at this one specific example, each of these is a different project, and you can see for my overall project that I'm running, and you can see all the different milestones and the dates that they are expected to run. You can see today's date on here with the milestones versus that. You also have, as part of this visual, not only all the different tasks and the spread of those tasks, you can also have KPIs. You can see, for example, this risk status. It can be red, yellow, or green. This is a KPI that will adjust based off of whatever calculation I have that determines the risk of this project. So if you want to be able to track the progress of some scenario or project that you are running alongside all the other data in your report, you should definitely try out this Gantt chart that Mock Software has created. Next up is our data connectivity section. And while we only have one bullet point for this section this month, it's a pretty big one. One of the most frequent requests that we've gotten for Azure SQL Database and Data Warehouse Connector users was the ability to leverage their Azure Active Directory authentication in order to connect to these Azure services in Power BI. So this month we're introducing a new Microsoft account option in the sign-in dialog that lets you do just that. So now whenever you go to connect to these two services, you'll be able to use your AAD account to authenticate. Now, support for this new auth type in the Power BI service is not quite there yet, but it will be coming in the next few weeks, so be on the lookout for a blog announcing that soon. And the very last feature we have for this month is some advanced language settings if you are using our Windows Store app version of the Power BI desktop. So normally whenever you open your version of Power BI desktop from the Windows Store, the display language is determined by your default Windows display language setting. If you want that to be different for whatever reason, you can now choose a separate display language from your Windows display setting. You can also now choose to separate your model language from your display setting. So if you really wanted to, you could have your default Windows setting to be in, say, Arabic, and you choose your display settings of the desktop to be in Spanish, but I happen to work at a global company where lots of people all over the world are viewing my report. So I'm going to choose to put the model language specifically to English, just because that happens to be the language the majority of my users happen to understand. And so you can actually have each of those now separate. You'll find these options in the Regional Settings tab of the Options dialog if you are using the Windows Store app. One thing to note is that for your model settings, that's only going to apply for any new reports going forward. You can't change your model language for your already created report that you're looking at. You'll also have to restart the desktop once you make changes to these settings for them to apply. So that's all for this month. I'm very excited to see what you do with these features and new custom visuals that we are releasing. Make sure to give them all a try and let us know what you think and what you'd like us to add next.